We just got the biggest rumor dump to date concerning the new Sony a7s III. We're going to talk about all of these new rumors, what's probably true, what's probably fake, all coming up in this video. Hey, I'm Luke with Wedding Film Coach. Thanks so much for stopping by the channel. I am so excited about this new camera, the Sony a7s III. Let's go ahead and dive into these new rumors that just surfaced this morning from SonyAlphaRumors.com. Let's take a look. And so, first caveat, take this with a grain of salt because he does say that he received 5 different rumors from 5 different sources, all first-time sources. And so he doesn't have any kind of relationship with these people. They haven't proven their reliability at all. So he has really no confidence in these rumors other than that they make sense when contextualized with all of the other rumors that he has received. And I'm feeling the same way. He says at the end of this that he feels like most of them are accurate, and I feel the same way, and I hope that that's not wishful thinking, but they really do make sense from what we've seen of the new technology that Sony's been developing, new sensors, and how they really want to push this camera to exceed expectations. So let's dive in. So this first source, they say that the AF system, the autofocus system, is almost the same as the A7R IV. And that's good news because it has great autofocus. I think the a7 III has great autofocus. Any kind of improvement from that would be well welcomed for sure. Real quick before we go on with the video, it would mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and then let me know in the comments what you're most excited about for this camera. Specifically, when I get my hands on it, I'm going to be doing extensive testing with it. So let me know what you would like to be tested first. Dynamic range, autofocus, low light, whatever. Let me know. Okay, on with the video. The video record button is now on top of the camera as opposed to the back by the EVF as we saw in the a7 III, or we definitely don't want it how it was on the a7s II on the side where you could barely reliably push it in when you needed to. And the 4K raw output is, he says, yes, it does have 4K raw output, but not sure if it supports the 4K 120 frames per second raw output. He said he did not try, but it says it's 16-bit raw output. Now, that is a jump up from what we had heard before. We'd heard before that it was 12-bit raw, and so 16-bit raw is definitely a huge upgrade. I would be very, very surprised if we saw any of that internal. We can almost bet that that will have to be an external recorder monitor, like an Atomos. Next one, he says he did not have a chance to test the raw output because the firmware is not available. Apparently, Atomos is working on something to support this a7s III's signal coming into its products. And lastly, for the first source, the dynamic range is 15 stops of dynamic range tested by Sony. And with all camera manufacturers, anytime they say you get 15 or 12 or whatever kind of stops of dynamic range, real world functionality is usually a stop or two under that. But you can bet that it's going to have really good dynamic range, and that's one of the first things that I will be testing when I get my hands on this new camera. Okay, second source, let's look at this. The second source says that the dials are looking from the back panel of the camera. They have a video dial for video mode to the left of the EVF, and they have a photo dial for the photo mode to the right of the EVF. And so that will be something a little differently than we've seen before. Usually in the top dial of the camera you have everything, photo and video and all of your presets. So that'll be something really interesting that they're including in this camera, which is odd because most people would not consider this Sony a7s line to be a hybrid camera. They would consider it to be a video-centric camera, even though it's still in kind of a photo form factor, but we'll see. Next one from the second source, he talks about the screen. I've talked about that before in a previous video. I'm very excited about better touch screen functionality. He does say that it has touch function available when navigating the menu. A lot of people are going to rejoice if that is true. I said previously that it's not going to be that big of a deal for me other than having a quick menu that you can bring up, like your function menu that you're used to be able to select different video codecs really quickly, or different autofocus settings or white balance or whatever. Just having that there at the touch of the screen is going to be really, really helpful. The last thing the second source talks about is ports. He says it has a removable port door, which I think is going to be nice, so you're not having to continually fight with those little port doors like you usually have to. And it has two USB-Cs. Lots of people expected that. USB-C has come a long way in the past really 2 years even, but certainly the last 5 years since the A7S II. And it has one micro HDMI, no flash sync port. Again, not a big surprise. This is not going to be a photo-centric camera, so really no need for that flash sync port. Source number 3. Let's look at it. Here's something unfortunate this source claims. There will be a crop on the 4K, a small one, similar to what it was on the A7S II. And I remember reading a little bit about that when the A7S II was first released, and it was minimal, like maybe 1 or 2%. I think it would be something like the new Canon R6, I believe, has a 1.07 times crop factor in their 4K, so it's probably going to be something like that. I doubt it's anything that we would notice. Also, this third source says that only up to 4K 60 frames a second will we have available in 10-bit 422 internal, which honestly 10-bit 422 internal at 4K 30 or 4K 24 frames per second will be great. If we have that available in 60 frames per second, that would certainly exceed my expectations, and I would very much welcome that to be true. Okay, 2 more to go. Let's talk about the fourth source. This one just has one claim, that they are claiming not to have any overheating issues for at least 1 hour of consistent filming. Now, that is really impressive, and he even says even at the highest frame rate. So we believe that this camera goes up to at least 120 frames per second. Some of the rumors say it goes up to 180 frames per second or even 240. So we'll have to wait and see, but to say that there are no overheating issues at all, that is a big claim, and a lot of people would be very happy if that were true. The last source, source number 5, this one has more claims than the others, so it's possible that these may have more weight to them, that it's actually someone who's tried out a few things and gave a lot of information to our website here. And let's look at a few things. He says he can confirm, or she can confirm, that 4K 60 gets 10-bit and unlimited recording time. We'd heard that unlimited recording time before, so that is great. I can confirm that at least 180 frames per second at 1080 will be supported by full autofocus and have sound available. That's awesome. He or she does claim that the 1080p is downsampled from 4K, and that would mean that this would be a really crisp, very sharp 1080p. Sometimes before in the past, a lot of Sony's cameras have had really bad 1080p where it's just really soft and not very sharp, and so that makes this claim exciting, that there's not going to be any line skipping or pixel binning. And then they do claim that there is no internal RAW functionality, which would be really sad, that the new codec is similar to the FX9 camera, which would be awesome because that's a great camera. And then the last claim that this Source 5 makes is no 6K, which from some of the other rumors that seem pretty dependable, that this is just a 12 megapixel camera to really focus in on high quality, low light video, then that's no surprise, because 12 megapixels cannot support really anything above 4K for being effective like that. And so these are the main new rumors that just came out. It really hit us with a truckload of information. And again, he says that his guess is that most of the info is actually correct. I'm not sure if he's making that claim just because of a gut feeling or because of how this info came to him. But again, with all of this in context of everything else that we've heard and that we've learned about this camera, even from Sony themselves, I would say that maybe 80 to 90% of this is true. Some of it is wishful thinking. Some of it may be even not the case, maybe not true at launch, but may be updated in a later firmware update, much maybe like some of the raw stuff, or maybe some of the 10-bit 422 internal functionality. That would be really great. And so now, after reading all of those new claims and new rumors, let's just take kind of a bird's eye view and take a look at all of the rumors we have so far, including these. Got a brand new 12 megapixel sensor, fast readout, no global shutter, but a fast readout should eliminate a lot of that rolling shutter that we've had issues with before. Records full HD up to 240 frames per second, 4K at 120 frames per second with 10-bit 422 and 4K 120 frames per second RAW over HDMI to an external recorder. A bit rate of up to 600 megabits per second. That would be amazing. A base ISO for S-Log3 at just 160. It was way higher before, and so that's going to allow for a lot more outside and daylight use of S-Log3, which a lot of people will be very, very happy about. And all around, the S-Log3 with that 10-bit and 422 is going to be much more usable than it was in the previous versions of this camera, which they were only functioning at 8-bit 420. There's going to be no dual ISO, and so that might hinder some of the low light functionality of this camera, but I'm betting that with the improved sensor technology that they've compensated for that, and it's not going to matter. They do have a max ISO of 409,600 for video, and then 16-bit RAW output. Sony claims 15 stops of dynamic range, the world's highest resolution, new 9.44 million dot EVF. Again, that EVF is really exciting. We haven't had any new rumors come out about the resolution for the back panel LCD yet, which is something I'm really looking forward to. I hope they upgrade this significantly. Next one is a new kind of passive noise-free cooling system. No live fan in it, no active fan, no overheating, no record time limits, a UHS 2 card, and a CF Express Type A card support. Each of the 2 slots will take them both. That's a really interesting rumor that we haven't talked about yet. This may be one of those things that they don't support the Type A CF Express right out of the gate at launch. This may be something that they come back and update in a firmware update later, and maybe even give us that raw recording internally at that point if we have that CF Express Type A card. One of the reasons I say that is because the CF Express Type A card is not even on the market right now. You can't buy any, and so it's developed by Sony, and so I'm thinking that as they perfect that technology and that form factor, that they may come out with a card at launch that you can buy with the camera. But I wouldn't be surprised to see them hold back on that, and maybe later on in the summer or later in the fall, September, October, come out with that new card and say, hey, if you have this card, you can film internally now with some of those higher frame rates or higher resolutions. The next one is that just the form factor, it looks pretty similar to the A7R4. It has a fully articulating screen like the one used in the Sony ZV-1, and we talked about that a few weeks ago with maybe having something like that, or even something like the Panasonic S1H that tilts and flips out. That would be great. An announcement late July, we already know that. Shipments start mid-August, so it could be a couple of weeks after they release it, after they announce it, that they actually start shipping these. So that's really exciting. So if you have any late August weddings or late August professional commercial gigs coming up, then this could be in your hand by those gigs. That would be amazing. And that the price, we haven't talked about the price yet, the price will be around $3,500. They even have received some rumors that say it may be even $4,000. But this is what I guess anywhere between $3,000 and $3,500. And if I had to make an actual guess, I suggested maybe $32.99 would be a good launch price. I could see them if a lot of these rumors are true and they're really packing a lot of quality into this camera. I think $3,500 is a fair price for sure. I think they're going to lose some sales with that higher price. However, I don't know Sony's pricing strategy, but if they wanted to price it a little higher at $3,500 or even $3,600, there's some people that are still going to buy this camera regardless, probably even up to $4,000. and then maybe later on, closer to Black Friday or closer to the holidays, when people are in a buying mood, they may drop this by $200 or $300 with a rebate or some sort of package deal with a new lens or something like that. And so that is it for all of the new rumors. So let's take a second. Let's take a second and think what is probably true, what's probably fake. The only thing that really I think may be fake, or that we won't see at launch, is, with any confidence, I would say, is the CF Express Type A card. I think that it will actually be able to take, the camera will have 2 slots, it will be able to take both, but I don't think we'll see any actual use of that Type A card until later on in the fall, late summer at earliest. So I feel like that's going to be an update that's going to come out later, and I hope that that they kind of take the cap off of that internal recording with that new card. That would be awesome. Everything else, the 16-bit RAW, that sounds like a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually had 12-bit RAW at launch. And I wouldn't be too disappointed with that. I mean, any kind of RAW is definitely going to be a step up for this form factor. There are even some cinema cameras that don't do RAW output. So I think either way, I'm not going to be too disappointed on that. 12-bit, 14-bit, 16-bit, it'll be amazing, especially if there's no overheating and no record limits. That is going to be incredible. Everything else, I really feel like we can take with a small grain of salt, that it's true-ish. And so I'm really excited about this camera. I don't feel like there's much wishful thinking in here. Again, based off what Sony has told us themselves, that they want to exceed expectations, and then to see how the industry has moved forward these last 5 years since the A7S II's release, and even in the last 2 years since the A7 III's release, and how Sony's really been positioning themselves to gain a lot of the market share at the entry-level market. Those small APS-C cameras, lots of people have got those and then started upgrading to full-frame cameras. The A7 III is an amazing entry-level full-frame camera, and so I feel like for the next 5 years, they have a lot of people that will eventually upgrade to the A7S II or the A7S III or the A7R2, R3, R4. They have a great strategy, I feel like, moving forward, and so it makes perfect sense to pack as much value and as much technology and as much engineering as they can into this new camera, and then maybe just update it along with firmware and software updates as we go for the next 5 years, so they don't have to develop a brand new camera, but they can support that in other ways. And something else we haven't talked about yet, but one of the reasons I say that is because Sony recently released a development kit for third parties for these cameras, and so that means that they're opening up the development cycle to more developers, so that anybody who's not Sony can make software for these cameras, whether it's time lapses, whether it's hyperlapses, anything you can think of that you might want in a camera as far as software updates or improvements of life. They're going to open this up for other developers to come in. Now we'll have to see how tight they are with that, if they're like Apple tight, or if they're Android tight, or if they're Canon tight. So we'll have to see, but that is exciting that it's kind of on the horizon, that maybe they're starting to make this ecosystem that can support more third-party purchases and third-party software developers exploring this ecosystem. And so I want to know, what are you most excited about? Let me know in the comments if it's all the 4K 120 frames per second, if it's RAW, if it's the 10-bit 422 color. What are you most excited about for this camera? Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked what you see here, go ahead and click on one of my other videos that will be shown on the screen. I've been talking a lot about this camera and the other cameras coming out too. It's a very exciting time for us as content creators, and I would love for you to join that journey with me. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video.